Imagine standing in a courtroom, asking for freedom from your marriage, and knowing before the judge even speaks that you will probably lose. In colonial America, divorce was not just rare. For women, it was nearly impossible. And even when women had strong reasons, abuse, abandonment, adultery, the courts often ruled against them. Why? To understand that, we need to step back into the early colonies of what would later become the United States. In the 1600s and 1700s, marriage was considered a legal and religious contract. It was not just between two individuals. It was between families, communities, and sometimes even the church. Marriage created economic stability. It ensured inheritance. It maintained social order. Breaking that contract through divorce was seen as dangerous to society. In many colonies, divorce required approval from a legislature or a high court. This wasn't a simple paperwork process. It was a public legal battle, and women entered that battle at a huge disadvantage. One major reason women rarely won divorce cases was a legal doctrine called coverture. Under coverture, a married woman had no separate legal identity. She could not own property independently. She could not sign contracts. She had limited legal standing in court. In simple terms, once married, a woman's legal existence was covered by her husband's. This meant if she wanted a divorce, she had to fight a legal system that did not fully recognize her independence. Her husband controlled property. He controlled finances, and often he controlled the narrative in court. Even if he was abusive, even if he was unfaithful, proving it was extremely difficult. Divorce laws varied across colonies. For example, in Massachusetts, divorce was technically allowed under Puritan law, but only for serious reasons like adultery or abandonment. In other colonies, especially in the South, full divorce was almost impossible. Legal separation might be allowed, but remarriage was not. Women had to prove adultery, extreme cruelty, desertion, and proof required witnesses. Private abuse inside the home? Very hard to prove. Meanwhile, a husband accusing his wife of adultery often had an easier path in court. The burden of proof fell heavily on women. Even if a woman somehow succeeded in getting a divorce, she faced another harsh reality: property loss. Since most property legally belonged to the husband, divorced women often left with very little. They could lose land, household goods, financial security, and child custody also usually went to fathers. Why? Because children were seen as economic assets, future laborers, heirs, and property holders. Courts believed fathers were better suited to control inheritance and finances. For many women, filing for divorce meant risking homelessness and poverty. That fear alone stopped countless women from even trying. Divorce wasn't just a legal issue. It was a public scandal. Court hearings were open. Accusations were discussed publicly. Reputation mattered deeply in colonial society. A divorced woman could face social isolation, damage to family reputation, difficulty remarrying. In small communities, everyone knew everyone, and moral judgment was harsh. Even if a woman was the victim, she could still be blamed. By the late 1700s, after the American Revolution, attitudes slowly began to shift. New ideas about individual rights started influencing marriage laws, but change was slow. For decades, divorce remained difficult, especially for women. The imbalance in court decisions reflected a larger reality. Colonial law prioritized property and patriarchy over personal happiness. So, when we ask, why did women rarely win divorce cases in colonial America? The answer isn't simple. It was the law, it was property rights, it was religion, It was social pressure. It was a system built to protect male authority. Divorce wasn't just a courtroom battle. For women, it was a fight against the entire structure of colonial society. And most of the time, the system won.